everyone. I hope you're having a great March. I am so stoked for this week. I don't know if you, like me, have ever dealt with anxiety or stress or toxic thinking. If you say you haven't, I'm going to call liar, liar, pants on fire on you, as my boys would say. Because since the beginning of time, humans have had to deal with these things. And this week, I'm bringing you someone who is one of the leading voices in the scientific concept of neuroplasticity. She's a best-selling author. She has decades of research, scientific research under her belt regarding the mind and how it affects us. She is a cognitive neuroscientist, and she is here to help us learn how to reduce our stress, anxiety, toxic thinking, and so many other things through 5 scientifically proven steps that she's come up with. If you don't know who I'm talking about, it's Dr. Caroline Leaf. She is here. She is coming in hot, and I cannot wait for you to hear the hope and the good news she has that we don't have to live with the minds that we live with. We don't have to live with stress. We don't have to live with toxic thinking. She also talks a lot about we don't have to feel bad for it, but we can learn how to self-regulate. We can learn how to manage our minds, and she's here to talk to us how to do that today. So I hope you, with me, enjoy Dr. Caroline Leaf as she helps us learn how to clean up our mental messes. Go check out her book on Amazon. Please buy it. It's incredible. I'm halfway through it. I cannot wait to finish it. She's absolutely incredible. So enjoy my new friend, Dr. Caroline Leaf. Dr. Leaf.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so good. And I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled to be talking to you. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled as well. Thank you so much.
My goodness. I feel like you're an old friend because I've absorbed probably all of your material over the last few years.
Oh, gosh. That's how lovely. I love that. Thank you so much. That's so nice.
Really, I think I've read almost all of your books and it's incredible. So I'm extra excited to talk to you because I feel, I just know what you have in you, and I can't wait for my listeners to hear it. Maybe the 2 that don't know about you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to promo the new book, and I just got it. Thank you for the early copy.
Oh, it's a pleasure. What was released yesterday, as you know, and we had, I don't know if you saw my Instagram live last night that we did with that launch party. I don't know if you saw that. My eldest daughter.
I didn't get to see it.
3 of my 4 kids work for me and my husband. So it's a real family business. But they had this, so we did a little launch party last night because my eldest daughter also is a mixologist on the side. So we did a little, she created a cocktail that actually matches my book. So it's blue with yellow. It was so fun. You should actually watch it because we were making it. But then as they were making it, my other kids and my husband came onto camera with this beautiful cake that was actually matched everything. It looks with all these little cookies that they'd made with the cover of the book and balloons. And so it was so cute. So I've actually got them in my studio all behind me at the moment.
How wonderful.
Anyway, that was fun. You should have a look at that. It was really fun.
I will for sure go watch it. Well, we're just recording right away. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Leaf here with me today. Where are you talking to me from in the world?
I'm talking to you from Dallas, Texas.
Oh, good. So we're close.
Oh, where are you?
I'm up in Allen. So I'm about 20 minutes. It's a suburb north.
Yes, I know Allen. I know where that is. Oh, wow. Just around the corner.
Yes. So that's so fun. Do you live in Texas now?
Yes, we do. We've been here for actually about 13 years, and we've been trying to get to Seattle to get to the sea, but with COVID, as you're about to move, COVID kind of changed our plans. So we based here. My studio's here, and this is where we based. But we will hopefully get a place by the sea in Seattle soon.
Oh, wow. Now that's so fun because I came from Seattle.
Oh, really?
Yes, I came to Texas from Seattle.
And see, how could you leave Seattle? It's so beautiful.
Isn't it? I still have family up there. We love going back.
Oh, my eldest daughter and her husband live there. So yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah, Seattle is just one of the best cities in the whole world.
I agree with you. Totally.
Well, I'm so excited for this and your new book, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. I'm working my way through it, and oh my goodness, it's incredible. And I want to dig into it and you to share so much regarding it. But first of all, I'm coming from a pastor's perspective.
Yeah.
So I'm just so excited because I think as I've started your book, like the church, the Christian community at large has just done such a poor job with mental health and stewarding it well. and speaking to it versus making it a stigma, the different things that happen, or the labels, which I love how you talk about the labels. And so I'm just really passionate as a pastor to obliterate that mindset and to reform. And that's why I love your work. And I also, on the other side, love science. And that's the other thing I feel like the Christian community opposes at times or is fearful of.
Yes.
And I feel like you bring the two of my passions as a pastor in getting it back into the Christian community, because it all leads to God in the end. You take science and you point us to God and his original design. And so just for some perspective for you as we talk, like that's just my heart for my listeners, is that they fall in love with the way that science points to God, and at the same time reorganize some thoughts maybe about mental health that were there before.
Yeah.
And so starting, what caused you to go into neuroscience?
Well,
where did it start?
Started nearly 40 years ago. So it's actually 38 years I've been in the field now. So it's almost 4 decades. And it started off in a very clinical sense where I was going into neurosurgery, and I decided to actually go into another degree that they had just sort of kind of created, which was a mixture of medicine and neuroscience, which was really in its infancy, and neuropsychology and psychology and communication, pathology, and all different. It was a sort of 7-year combination that they pushed into 4 years as a trial degree. And there's only a few of us that qualified, and it was absolutely harrowing in terms of time. Honestly, we spent 15 hours a day in lectures and clinics 7 days a week. We just never got out of there. And at the time, I remember thinking, why did I do this to myself? Neurosurgery would have been way easier. And my
neurosurgery would have been easier. That's a great line.
No, seriously. My medical doctor friends who were studying that, they had more time than I did to actually... Anyway, so looking back now, I'm glad I did do it, because then it launched me into all the years of research that I did post that right up until now, in studying an area that is just not studied enough, and that is the mind. The mind is just an area that in science is referred to as consciousness and is considered the hard question of science. But in my mind, it's the most, and here I use the word mind, in my mind is the most obvious question of science, because you're always using your mind there. And, so I started looking in a clinical sense with people with traumatic brain injury and Alzheimer's and learning disabilities and dementias and extreme trauma from abuse and war and whatever.
So these are all like clinical trials that you're doing at the same time that you're...
Yes, I was doing clinical work, clinical application, working more with patients. And then I started applying it. Well, this is, and I developed a system, I developed a theory, developed a system, and started asking the question, what is mind? Can we change it? What are thoughts? What are memories? What are emotions? What is brain? What's the relationship and the difference between mind and brain? And what level of agency or control do we have? And as I said, I did some of the first neuroplasticity research in my field. And in fact, the first time when I started doing my first actual research clinical trial, I remember saying to my professors that the mind can change the brain can change. And that was considered a ridiculous concept back in the 80s, because in the 80s, they didn't believe the brain could change. They did talk about the mind and brain as being separate, but the brain wasn't seen as something that could change. So I did some of the first work, as I said, in my field in neuroplasticity, showing that if you control and direct and deliberately and intentionally direct the mind, which is always changing, you can then change the brain and then change people's behaviors. And so that launched a whole search of what is mind, what is brain, how do we control mind, how do we change mind, how do we change brain, how do we improve or whatever. And then fast forward to today, 38 years later, I applied it in multiplicity of different contexts, including just recognizing that as humans, we all live in a mental mess, and that's totally okay, because from the time we open our eyes in the morning until the time we go to sleep at night, we immersed in life. And life is a whole series of events and circumstances that we cannot control. But we can control how we respond. And that's mind. That's mind work.
That's mind work. Okay.
So that's really what kind of launched me into this whole thing.
And can you explain just the definitions of mind versus brain and then neuroplasticity as well, just for those who might not know?
Absolutely. So mind is the biggest part of us. Mind is 99% of who you are. So
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah, it's just huge. So if I just go to the easiest part to explain, which is brain and body are the physical. So if you look at yourself, you can see yourself. This is you, and we know that we have a brain in our skull, and this is the physical. So the physical is about 1% of who you are as a human, but your mind, which is the 99% part of you, is the aliveness, is your aliveness. So if you think of a person who's dead, the difference between someone who's alive now, like you and I and the listeners listening, and someone who's dead is your mind. So your mind is that aliveness, this ability that we have to think, feel, and choose, which generates, which keeps the brain and the body functioning and alive, and is therefore an energy force. And as soon as we say anything like energy when it comes to churches, then people start thinking that I'm talking about something bad. Well, let me quickly for a moment just say that science comes from the word sclera. Sclera means knowledge. So science is basically knowledge. And so when we study science, we're just basically studying the knowledge, and God is the source of all knowledge. So we're simply studying how the universe and us as humans, what we're made of and how we work. And so any form of science is like that. So if people are scared of things like energy, then you shouldn't use your cell phone, because your cell phone operates on energy. We shouldn't be using any kind of Zoom technology. You shouldn't be eating. You shouldn't be driving a car. All of that is science. So science is basically how the world works and how you work. So that just kind of dissipates or kills that argument immediately, because there's been this ridiculous sort of split in the church between science and spirituality.
Yes.
And there shouldn't be, because it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So that's it. And it's been a big drawback, and it's held a lot of people back, and it's created a lot of guilt and condemnation and trauma in the church. And I see that in the thousands of direct messages and emails that we get of people in the church really feeling condemned and guilty because they don't seem to be able to get their mind right, and what's wrong with them, and they don't have enough faith, and terrible things that actually are not right at all. So I'm very glad for this opportunity to have written this book and share it with, I reach out to the whole world, because I don't see the difference between people. People are humans, and humans are wired for love, and we need to help each other to understand that it's okay to battle. As you open your eyes in the morning, you're in life, and you're experiencing life with this 99% mind. Mind is your aliveness. So on a psychological level, or on a sort of easy to understand level, your mind is how you think and feel and choose. And you're always thinking, always feeling, and always choosing. When you awake, you think and feel and choose to build thoughts. So thoughts are real things that you build into your brain and your body and your mind. So the
mind puts the thoughts in the brain.
Exactly. The mind, you control you are your mind, and you experience life, and you basically build the thoughts into your brain.
And those are real,
they are real
physiological things that
Exactly. They're real structures that are made of proteins and chemicals, and the actual experience is inside those proteins as these quantum and physicist vibrations. So it's all physical. And our mind, on a physicist level, on a physics level, we use quantum physics and Einstein's physics and the classical physics, a combination. We can understand mind on that level as being a gravitational field that moves around and in the person. And this is very important, because if a person's dead, there is no field at all. There's no gravitational force. Whereas if you're alive, there's a gravitational force. And you can physically experience that. If you're around someone who's very toxic and they're very negative, it's almost, or they're shouting at you or something, it almost feels like someone's throwing something at you. And that's actually them, their mind basically generating this toxic field. So if mind is very real. It's basically our spirit and our soul, if you want Christianese to understand it. And it's a physical force. And if you think of gravity, we all understand we're not floating around in the air because of gravity. So the gravitational fields are what we are immersed in, and that's years and years of scientific study. What they've also discovered is that we have our own unique gravitational fields around each of us, and that is unique, and that basically is kind of where your mind is, and it's connected to, obviously, to the source, which is God. So when we are really tuning into the depths of who we are, made in God's image, we're tuning into our wise mind. So mind is this big concept. It's this gravitational field, if you want to get sort of physically about it.
Yeah.
It's psychologically wise. It's this think, feel, choose. And it's the thing that is that keeps you alive. It's your aliveness. And it's through your mind that you experience life in a very experimental fashion. That's why it's perfectly okay to make a mess. And we build our mind, with our mind, we build our experiences into our brain as physical thought trees made of protein. But Jamie, we also build these experiences into our brain as trees, as I've said, but you also build them into your body, in every cell of your body. So every cell of your body is also storing this. That's why we get reactions in our gut, and why we get palpitations in our heart, and why we shake.
Right.
Yeah, why we get adrenaline rushes, because it's in our mind, it's in our body, and it's in our brain. So 3 places.
Oh my goodness, that's so intense.
It is intense. So every experience you have is in your mind, which is that gravitational field thing, and in your brain as these protein trees, and in your body, in your DNA. It's very complex, and it's also changing all the time, because experience is changing from moment to moment. We are thinking, feeling, and choosing, and sometimes we get it right, and we say the right thing, and other times we get frustrated, or we get worked up, or we get imposter syndrome, or we snap, or we get irritable, or we react wrong, or we react, and that's the messes that we make. So what I've tried to do with cleaning up your mental mess is to help people understand that you're human, and it's absolutely normal that you're making a mental mess all day long, and that the whole point is that you need to recognize it and manage it. And on the other hand,
I think you call it mind management, right?
Mind management. You want to mind management. But on the other hand as well, Jamie, is to recognize that we have patterns. So as we go through life, we can see, hey, I've got this consistent pattern of like always getting into this kind of argument, or having these kind of relationship problems, or always responding in a certain way. Yeah. And those are established toxic patterns that have come from a cause, an origin. So everything you experience comes from an origin. It's a source. The established ones are things that have been there for a while. So things like trauma and toxic habits and that kind of thing. So cleaning up your mental mess is to help us clean up the day-to-day stuff, plus clean up the long-term stuff, and then I developed a concept called the neurocycle to be able to do that.
Oh, that's so good. And I want to get to the neurocycle, because I haven't gone there in the book yet. So I'm like, I fast forwarded, but I'm excited to hear like you unpack that. But really quick, neuroplasticity then, because that was kind of that's how I found you originally when you were talking about that. And I was so fascinated. Can you explain that as it relates to like the mind, the brain, and our biology?
Absolutely. So when I say that with your mind, which is this gravitational field, you experience life, and then you build that into your brain, that's neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the fact that your brain can change. So neuro means brain, plastic means it's plastic, it can change. So your brain is always changing, and you're the one who changes it. So whatever you think, feel, and choose is changing your brain. And also what you eat and what you put onto your body and into your body changes your brain, and it changes your body. So everything from the outside coming in affects the brain, and the brain changes. So the brain can't change itself. The brain is changed by the mind and by our decisions, because our mind drives our decision of what to eat, and our mind is actually driving the digestive system as we eat. So the mind is the first it's like
ground zero
source. It's ground zero.
Yeah.
It's the
for everything.
For everything. Okay. So if you are choosing to eat in a very healthy way, and eating this nice, sustainable, organic, farm to table meal, but you're sitting there totally worked up about something that's just happened maybe at work, that's totally worked up is going to be a toxic thought in your brain, in your energy field of your mind, as well as in your body, and your immune system's going to go crazy. Your whole body environment changes, and your gut brain won't work properly, and that means you will lose up to 80% of the nutrition. So that's crazy of what you eat if you don't get your mind, which is crazy. And the same thing, you may be going for like doing this fasted workout, and you come back and have that super organic breakfast, but the whole time you're worrying, and you're not managing your mental mess. You're trying to deny that the guilt or the shame or the depression, and which are all warning signals. They're not illnesses, which is something we should talk about.
I would love to. Yeah, and you can just go there right now if you'd like.
Absolutely.
I love your take on this.
So it's so important. So let's just to continue that story, and then I'll move into the mental health. So let's say that you got up early, you went and did your fasted workout, you came back and ate your organic, sustainable farm-to-table meal, and now you're about to start working. So all those, maybe you even, did your prayer time, you did your breathing exercises, you did
right.
whatever it is that you do, but the whole time you've been worrying about that email that you read before you went to bed.
This is so me. You're calling me out right now, Dr. Lee. This is what we. I guess this is what we all do. Yeah.
This is. Listen, if you're a human, you do this, and you know what? It's okay. Hear my message. This is okay. This is very, very normal. Yeah. But it's normal to have this. But what the extra key is here, we can manage that. We don't. It doesn't have to be. So it's normal to be upset by the email if it was nasty. What's not good for us is to just let it permeate through the exercise, because you've lost 80% of the benefit of the exercise. You've just lost 80% of the benefit of that great meal because you're still worrying about the email. But Esa, what you should have done, this is mind management. So here you go to bed with this email. You read it before you went to bed. You got totally worked up. You had an awful sleep, if you even fell asleep, or you kept waking up. You wake up exhausted. So you think, okay, well, let me just, slap on some scriptures, do my little Band-Aid prayer time.
I would love to go into that too. The Band-Aids of scripture.
Yeah. And use God as a genie, magic potion stuff. Okay, I've done my little bit, and then off you go and do the whole workout story. But you're still worrying. So you've actually created, as you woke up with neurochemical chaos. You went to bed with neurochemical chaos. You went to bed with toxicity. You went to bed with that toxicity in your brain, mind, and body, like I've described, the little toxic trees, creating an environment that's alerted your immune system to say, hey, there's something going on here. The immune system in the brain and the body work together to keep you in a survival mode, which is the wired for love mode, which is our made in God's image. So we're made in God's image, which God is love. We're wired for love. We see it scientifically. We see it neuroscientifically. We see it in the mind. So basically, we're wired for survival. So worrying about that email will create a situation in the brain where you've got these toxic thoughts that threaten survival. And it's not that you're going to die from the email, but it does. It puts your body into a very vulnerable state that increases your chance of not sleeping so well, which then increases your chance of this immune response, which increases inflammation, increases cortisol, increases adrenaline, affects your DNA, and hormones, and you get the gut brain, your bacteria in your gut. You get this whole cascade, and it may just be a little bit, but let's say this is a consistent pattern and you're doing it every day. Over time, you're going to start developing health issues, because a consistent pattern creates this environment of vulnerability. So your brain and your body become vulnerable to all these different effects, to different diseases and microbes and things and viruses and bacteria out there. So just in summary, if we don't get our mind managed, if we don't accept our mental messes, give ourselves permission to have them, but also give ourselves permission to say, okay, I accept my mental mess, but I'm going to manage it.
Good. This is so good.
Thank you. If we do that, then we shift the environment, and then we decrease the vulnerability. And that's the key. Our brain and body and mind are designed to be managed. And that's what capturing thoughts are and renewing the mind is. So we throw out the scripture, capturing thoughts.
Yes. I was just going to ask you to go into this. Yes.
Okay. So we throw out that scripture a lot. Bring all thoughts into captivity, renew the mind. And then people think, okay, well, I'll memorize 10 scriptures and that's it. No, it's not. Because capturing all thoughts is very specific. It's all thoughts. So that begs the question, what is a thought? And I've already explained a thought is something that we build as a result of our mind, which is thinking, feeling, choosing. So you wake up, you're experiencing life, and you're thinking, feeling, and choosing, and you're building thoughts. So thoughts are these real things. Thoughts look like trees, and a tree has roots and branches. So a thought has roots and branches. So thought's a big thing with all these roots and branches. So let's take the email. You read the email, that's the experience. With your mind, you converted that into this toxic thought in your brain. The roots of the little toxic tree are the words in the email, and then the trunk and the branches and leaves are your interpretation and your response to the email. Okay, and then the behaviors that produces are the poor sleep, getting up in the morning and still worrying, going and doing the workout and all that stuff, and losing the benefit of all of it because your environment of your body's changed, your inflammation's up, all that kind of stuff. But if we shift that whole story and we say, okay, I go to bed, I read this email just before I go to bed, and instead of worrying about it, I say, okay, this really has thrown me. I am extremely upset. So you acknowledge it.
Yes, acknowledging it. And not feeling bad for it.
No, and not feeling bad for it, and not feeling
because
bad
it's
for
human.
your...
Yeah, because on a large scale, this is a smaller scale, like an email, but on a large scale, if we can feel so much shame and guilt for not, I've been renewing my mind. Why isn't it working?
Exactly, because you haven't exactly
as we think it is. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if renewing the mind and capturing thoughts mean that you've got to capture that thought, and capturing that thought means you've got to go through a process of renewal, which means how do you do that? That's what the neurocycle is. The neurocycle is the science of how to do it. Yeah. So it's the how-to. So here you are in bed, you read the email, you're totally thrown, and the mismanagement would be ignore it, suppress it, say a scripture, little prayer, pretend it's not there.
I have a PhD in that.
Trying to sleep and all that. I think everyone does.
Yep.
Okay? Or we can go into mind management, which is, I'm going to capture that thought. And I must just say that I will come back to the mental health system and all that stuff in a moment.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to capture that thought. So what does that mean? That means that with my mind, I've got to stand back and observe my own thinking. So it doesn't mean you have to get out of bed. It just means that mentally in your mind, you stand back and observe your thinking, feeling, and choosing in response to that later. But there's two of you. The one of you is the messy one who's now totally immersed in this email, getting upset or whatever. Maybe it was a comment at dinner or whatever. I'm just giving you an example.
Yep.
So the one is a total mess. The other you is the wise mind, the wired for love mind, the one that says, okay, I know that I shouldn't be reacting to this, but you don't use the word I. The wise mind says, hey, Caroline, that's okay. I know you're feeling like this is throwing you. Don't worry about it. So you're talking you. And then the messy mind answers it, oh gosh, I really feel bad about this. This is making me feel guilty, shamed, angry, frustrated, irritated. I hate this person. I love this. I should love them. Guilt, condemnation, but I don't love them. They're awful. This has happened. How could they do this? This is terrible. And the wise mind saying, yeah, come. Talk about it. Gather awareness of it. What are these emotional signals? What are you feeling? And that there's no condemnation. There's just pure gathering awareness of in a very non-judgmental way. Because as you gather awareness, instead of that thing going down into that toxic thought, burrowing deep into the depths of the non-conscious mind, which is where all our thoughts are stored, as I've mentioned already, and everything. It's full of trillions of these trees, and in the brain, and in the body. Okay, so instead of it burrowing into those three places, as a toxic version, you capture it before it can dig deep, and you say, okay, let me gather, and no guilt. There's the important thing here is it's okay, because I can guarantee millions of other people have been in the same position as you. You're not the first person to have a reaction. And even though you may be saying terrible things about this person and you shouldn't be, that's okay. Say them because you get it out, get it in the open, and gather awareness of it. So gather awareness of your emotional reactions. What are you physically? How are you feeling physically? Adrenaline's rushing and suddenly you're not tired anymore. You're like wide awake. Meanwhile, you're actually exhausted because you've had a long day. You can feel like your mind's getting foggy. You can feel like your chest is closing, whatever. And then your behaviors, you feel agitated, you up and down, you can't sleep, and you're worrying your husband or wife or whatever. You're making a noise, you can't rest, you're wiggling around, you getting whatever. And then you go into a broken sleep. So what are your behaviors? And then what is your perspective? So you go to sleep with this, oh my gosh, this is always happening to me or whatever. I don't know what. So you gather awareness, then you reflect, and you do this before you go to sleep. But then your second step is you reflect. Reflecting is like if you shine a light through a prism, it breaks into a multiplicity of colors, the colors of the rainbow. Reflect is reflecting so much depth. There's so many reasons why. You haven't just reacted like that for no reason. There's always a reason why that has upset you so much. So you need to find the reason. Otherwise, it controls you. There's some origin going on there. There's some story. There's something that has, and until you find that root, you're always going to react like that in similar situations. And it's going to be something that controls you. So you start the reflect process, which is asking, answering, and discussing. And then you write down. And that's why you should always have a neurocycle journal next to your bed, carried around with you, or do it in your phone, where you can write down. And the way that you write is in the form of a metacog, which I teach in the book. And a metacog has had 38 years of research. It's a patterned way of writing, and it's absolutely phenomenal for forcing the two sides of the brain to work together and to really get deep introspection happening, that you can dig out the reasons. So you basically
metacog?
Called a metacog, yeah. And there's an example in the book, and it's phenomenal. It's one of the key shifting within the 5 steps. You don't use it alone. Obviously, you use it within the 5 steps.
Right.
It's a whole system. It's a system. The 5 steps is not a quick fix. It's a system of how you basically capture thoughts and renew your mind. So it's how you manage your mind. So it can be applied to anyone, anywhere, anytime, any age, and every human. If you're alive, you should use it, because everyone has a mind and everyone needs to manage their mind. And the earlier you teach your kids this, the better. So there's a whole, I'm writing a whole series of books for kids, but there's also,
oh my goodness,
there's also a neurocycle app. Thank you. There's an app called the Neurocycle, and there's a whole section for kids in there as well. And then also the techniques are in the book. So if people get the book, everything I'm saying now, it's so easy to read. I'm sure you've seen there, even though there's scientific studies.
You do such a good job at talking to the layperson.
Well, thank you. So
I do very much. Yeah.
I do put science in, but I think it's very important because we need to actually recognize that this is evidence-based and this is from clinical application. This is not just woo-woo stuff. This is hardcore science. So then essentially you write it down, but you don't have to be fancy with your writing. Just pour your thoughts on paper. No judgment, no guilt. Vomit your mind and brain on paper, literally, into this format. And then you recheck it, which is 4th step, which is you try and get some, it's like a mental autopsy, getting some, what does this mean? Starting to reconceptualize it, see it differently. And then you end the little session with an active reach. So an example of an active reach in this particular example could be something like, okay, well, I think that I'm doing this and responding in this way repeatedly. It seems to be a pattern. I can't do anything about this now, but this is not good for me. It's not going to help me now. I'm going to do this, this, and this. So, and then you kind of seal and write down a little action step and say, okay, now I'm going to stop there. So your active reach is this little action step that I'm going to deal with this tomorrow. I'm going to sleep now, and I'm going to actually commit to doing a 63-day neurocycle program so that I can find out why I keep getting upset by this kind of thing. This is a definite pattern in my life.
Yeah.
So you can do that neurocycle that would have taken you a minute or two to do. And then you commit. So there's the in the moment neurocycle. Then now tomorrow you start an active program where you commit 15 to 45 minutes and you go through the 5 steps very meticulously, just for 15 to 45 minutes. And you do that for 21 days.
As related to the email or as related to the
email stimulated something. So what happened is that email was the experience. The experience brought up a reaction. Okay. The reaction is the reactions were the warning signals, your emotions, the anger, the frustration, the irritation, the physical sensations, the behaviors, all that. And then those are pointing, as you reflected and went through the 5 steps, that is showing, sort of taking you towards the root of the tree. And the root of the tree is the origin of what happens. So what you see in let's say by the recheck stage, you say, okay, well, this kind of thing is not the first time that I've got upset. I'm getting upset about this.
This is a thing with me.
It's a thing with me. It's a thing. Yeah. And this is just example. This is
we all have the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We all have this. We all have lots of things, and that's okay. That's okay. We designed to manage them, and that's the key issue. So you see that this is a thing, and you see that the letter was just one activator, but it could have been a conversation. It could be a text message. It could be an Instagram post. It could be a look. But you find yourself, so you can start identifying. You see, that's a pattern, and it's actually affecting your ability to function really well at work. I mean, whatever. I'm just saying that one email can show you, hey, this is a pattern. You're upset all the time about something. Yeah. Why are you always upset?
Or I think everybody hates me. I think I'm always going to serve everybody, or I'm always going to disappoint, or it can be 100 different things.
Exactly.
But we normally would you say we normally like gravitate individually towards a few, or do you think we go between all of them all the time?
You mean in terms
the
of
manifestations of just like...
Well, if we don't manage it, we'll live in chaos. We'll live in a mental mess. We'll swing. And
this is the whole point of the book, the mental mess.
Exactly. Okay. If you don't manage it, it'll
swing. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, you will. You will literally just
swing from I'm God's gift to the world to I am total trash.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then you'll go and get upset again like 10 times that day. And then you'll feel guilt and condemnation because why am I feeling this? You don't have to live in that. That doesn't have to be how we live. So what we can do, so this is it's systematic. Instead of wasting hours of energy, and energy is limited.
It's breaking our bodies down biologically.
Exactly. Well, it is. And I show that in my book that if you did this whole scenario that I have painted, if you go the toxic side, you actually will then decrease your cellular health. So your body's made, your brain and body are made of 37 to 100 trillion cells. And every single cell, we can look at that. We can look at the cell health. So I looked at in my clinical trials, we looked at cell health. So to say this very simple, if your mind is a mess and it's consistently a mess and unmanaged, the telomeres, which are the little ends of chromosomes. So if you make a cross with your fingers and you look at your little angled cross, your fingernails would be telomeres. Telomeres are what I measure in my clinical trials. Telomeres show us how you're managing your mind and your lifestyle. And if you want them nice and long and strong. You don't want them weak and broken. If they're weak and broken, you're going to have a very unhealthy body. You're going to have an environment of a body that's going to be very susceptible to inflammation and disease. But if you can manage your mental mess, those telomeres get long and strong and very healthy. And then and we'll see this like in my clinical trials. I showed a couple of case studies, but in all my subjects at the beginning of the clinical trial, in both the experimental and the control group, they had their telomeres were not happy, and some of them.
And you can physically see it.
You can physically see it, and also
it's just wild.
It translates into, and I've got graphs in the book and everything showing like how it changed. So they shorter. The telomeres are shorter, and they get either shorter or longer. So it translates into biological age. So this is how powerful it is. Some of our subjects that were so depressed and like saying, I'm clinically depressed, I can't cope, there's no hope, relationships offline, work offline, wanting to check out, terrible, like in a terrible state. Telomeres very short. Their biological age, which is the age of the cells, the age of the cells and therefore your organs, were 30 to 35 years older than their actual chronological age. So that means that they were, let's say the person was in their 30s. They had a body of a sickly 70-year-old. Now, if you are 30 and you have a body of a sickly 70-year-old, obviously you're more vulnerable to diseases.
Oh, sure.
But in 9 weeks, we reversed that, and just through the neurocycle. In 9 weeks, we already saw major changes at 3 weeks, and then by 9 weeks, that there was a significant lengthening of the telomeres, and then the chronological and biological age caught up. The inflammation in the body changed. The hormone levels changed. The cortisol.
By mind management.
Mind management. I didn't use drugs. I didn't use diet. I just used mind management. And that's why we have to capture thoughts. And that begs us back to the other question. If we wake up in the morning and we go through the day, how many thoughts do we build? We build about 8,000 to 10,000 thoughts
in a day.
And so that's how many experiences that we have during the day, more or less 8,000 to 10,000. And I mean, this is estimates. It could be less or more.
Sure.
And then to build a thought, like right now, everyone listening is building a thought. And that thought is going to be built in those three places. And the thought looks like a tree. And the thought, like a tree is made of branches and roots, a thought is made of memories, branch memories and root memories. Now, my words and our conversation are the roots of the thought tree that everyone's building into their brain at the moment through their mind. And then the tree trunk and the branches are, every person who's listening is going to have their own unique interpretation of what I'm saying. Now, this is super powerful because as I say more and as you ask me more questions and you make comments, so they're adding roots. And then that adds the interpretation. So immediately you grow more branches. So this thing keeps growing. And then what's super interesting is as I'm talking, not only are you growing, but to help you understand and form your own interpretation, other existing thoughts that are already in your mind are popping up. So as I'm talking, all kinds of thoughts are popping up and down.
Right.
Okay. And so we build 8,000 to 10,000 thoughts, but those 8,000 to 10,000 thoughts are informed by at least another 5 to 10. So we have at least anything from 30 to 50 to 70,000 plus thoughts going through our mind in any one day.
And they're all affecting us.
And they're all affecting us.
Drastically,
and they're all supposed to be captured. Bring all thoughts into captivity.
That's so good. Yep.
Therefore, we are supposed to live self-regulated lives. And self-regulation means I need to stand back and observe my own thinking. Exactly like I described you sitting in bed with the email, and I said you stand back and observe your own thinking. Self-regulation means that I need to be, while I'm consciously awake, I need to be consciously monitoring how I'm thinking, feeling, and choosing to the email, to the conversation, to the information I'm hearing, to how I've just responded to X, Y, and Z, to how I'm responding to whatever. Monitoring that. So neuroscientifically, I wanted to see, is this possible? How does this look in the brain and the body? And we see that we can be consciously aware of our thoughts every 10 seconds.
We can.
Absolutely.
We can teach ourselves to do that.
Exactly. That's what the neurocycle does.
Every 10 seconds, that's what it does.
Seconds.
Okay, wow.
So I'm not asking you to put your timer on and bing every 10 seconds. I mean, that'd drive one crazy.
Right. I can't think about my thinking that much.
Exactly. But essentially what it means is that when you're awake, you should be monitoring how are you awake? How am I doing my awakeness? How am I, just as you talk to someone, like you and I talking now, how are we communicating? How's our responses? We're listening to each other. We're monitoring our responses. It's easy in a podcast situation to do it because we are so aware of communicating. We're really conscious of it. So this state of mind that you're in now, this is how we should be living all the time. Wow. See, so this is an example. This is kind of
great.
And that's how we should be living. That way we can catch ourselves. We can be proactive. We can like go from maybe from here you've got a million things. Like at the moment we're doing this book tour, virtual book tour. So I'm doing up to 9-10 hours a day of talking and different interviews and going to signing books and at bookstores and doing multiple lives. And so I'm 9-10 from 6 in the morning. I'm going until sometimes 9-10 at night. So in between, it's very easy for me to get overtired, and someone will, like maybe my husband will ask me something, or one of my daughters. I've got 3 of my daughters work for me, and I might snap at them, and I have. I own it. They'll say, "Hey, you got to do this now," and I say, "No, I'm busy doing that now," and then I can realize, "Hey, hang on." Self-regulate, neurocycle. I didn't have to use that.
You do it all the time.
All
on
the
yourself.
time.
Yep.
So I mean, just already this morning, I actually snapped at one of my daughters because one of the ones who's my producer actually told me, "Listen, Mom, you've got this and this and this. I need this done by this time." I said, "Listen, I'm trying to do it all," and that's how I responded. And as soon as I responded, I got the little look from her, and it was that's all I needed.
It was go to your neurocycle look.
Exactly, go to your neurocycle look. Exactly.
I'm going to implement this in my family. This is so wonderful.
Gosh. But it was so cool because immediately, Jamie, I said, oops. I was aware immediately. I self-regulated. I gathered awareness. I was snappy. My body language, wrong tone of voice. I reflected. The recheck, when you're doing a quick write, sorry, not recheck. When you do the write, in that moment, I didn't sit down and write. I visualized. So in the quick stuff, you can visualize. Yes. And what I visualized was me.
You do it the metacog.
When you do the daily sit down, which I need to just finish explaining in a moment. But when you do the quick one, like in the moment, I literally it was probably 10 seconds. I did the neurocycle. As I snapped, I immediately self-regulated. I immediately gathered awareness of what I was, all the signals. Then I reflected, why am I doing this? I'm tired. I must just do it. And the third part, I visualized. I actually watched myself as I was watching a movie. I watched myself talking to her, and I saw what I was doing. I saw my body language. So my recheck was to adjust everything. My active reach was to say, sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. I just found under pressure. I definitely can do this. I can do it then. Does that work? And I mean, that could have been an argument. We could have both been upset for hours, and we didn't have to be.
Your body could have gone into stress mode.
Exactly. I caught it there. And the instant I did that, now if in the snapping moment, immediately I put my body into toxic stress and increased inflammation. This is how quick it happens. As you respond in that way, your glucose levels will shoot up, which means your cortisol levels will shoot up, which means your homocysteine levels will shoot up, which means your telomeres will be affected. And I can go on and on and on. For example, I was testing out a continuing glucose monitoring. It's a GCM, a continuous glucose monitoring device, which is used for not for you get them for diabetes, but this is one for just it's a research thing I'm involved in, and I had to wear this for a month just to see. I wanted to test it out in terms of mind and the neurocycle, and I experienced an acute trauma that was very, very severe. Our family had a very acute trauma happening over December, and in that moment, I happened to just look down at my phone, and the app of that's measuring the glucose monitor was I could see what was there, and my glucose had shot up to 240. Now that's heart attack level, because normally I'm at about 86 to 94.
Oh my goodness.
And as soon as I saw that in my state of trauma, I neurocycled. So you can use it. So you can use it for acute trauma. I did it in a repeater. I did a cycle in about 10 seconds. I was still totally traumatized, but I got it under control, and my glucose dropped back down to 94 in seconds. Now, if my glucose was up at 240, I can guarantee my cortisol was up at a level that was dangerous. My heart would have been at risk.
Gosh.
My heart was beating so fast it felt like I was going to have a heart attack. And I managed to control that in seconds. And
through
this
the
is
neurocycle. Yep.
through the
Oh, my
neurocycles, through mind
goodness.
management, this is how important this is. So, we and then that's for the moment by moment stuff. What about those patterns, as I said already, that if you're constantly upset?
Right, 20 years of trauma or
Exactly, which then is manifesting in becoming maybe highly sensitive. And that's maybe why you're upset. So you see, oh, actually, I'm highly sensitive. Why are you highly sensitive? Oh, because this. And then you can eventually get to the root, which is the origin story. But you're not going to find that root in 5 seconds.
Okay.
The day-to-day ones help you manage the acute stress, help you manage the moment-by-moment stuff, and train you. It's practice to become self-regulated. But then you have to do the hard work of sitting down every day for 15 to 45 minutes. And that works in a time frame. So would you like me quickly to explain just that's the time frame, because that's very significant.
Yes.
Okay. So
Please.
if you
is this all within the 63 days?
Yes. So what I've explained now, the first example I gave of the upsetness with the letter, or the little thing I did with my daughter, that's using the neurocycle quickly.
Yes.
So that's using it in the moment. But then, as I indicated, the upsetness is showing some bigger pattern in your life where you're always upset about everything or whatever, which was the example I used. So now you decide you're going to sit down.
Now we're going to talk about, good.
Okay. So now you sit down, and everyone should be doing this every day, because like you bathe every day, clean your teeth every day, clean your house every day, you should be cleaning the mental mess every day. This is an ongoing process. So we've got to keep doing this. Okay. So you sit down for 15 to 45 minutes, a very limited time. You choose your time frame and you do the 5 steps. Every day you have your neurocycle journal out, so you don't solve it in one day. You're not going to find all the roots in one day. You may not get very far the first day. So that's why you do the second day, the third day. By day 21, it takes around about 3 weeks to have the full neuroplastic effect. Now, neuroplasticity is happening immediately because you're doing the work, which is your mind changing your brain. But it's going to take you a full 3 weeks to identify and work through from the branches to the tree trunk to the roots, and to find all the roots, and then to reconceptualize that, reconstruct that, or redesign that into a healthier version. So imagine a healthy green tree, and imagine a toxic, ugly, burnt tree. So the toxic issue is that ugly thing, and the roots are the origin story. The roots are always the origin story. Like I said today, that the origin story of today's conversation, which is a healthy thought tree, is what I'm saying. And the branches are always your interpretation. So the abuse, for example, would be the unhealthy roots. The branches would be how you've dealt with that. The bullying would be the roots. The toxic, whatever toxic, the war trauma, the terrible marriage, whatever. All those would be the roots.
Yeah.
And then your interpretation. So roots always grow branches. Branches is how you manifest. Okay. So you've got to unpack that, and it takes time. I mean, you may have been abused for years and suppressed it for years, and only dealing with it now because now it's exploding, because these things are alive. You can't suppress forever. And your body is in that environment of inflammation and all the things I've been saying. So eventually it explodes in your mind and your body. So at some point in your life, it's going to explode in high levels of anxiety, depression, etc. Now and before I dive into the 5 steps over time, I now want to just come back to the question you asked me earlier on, and which will make this 5-step make more sense, is that anxiety and depression from suppressed trauma, from day-to-day stuff, anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, grief, exasperation, frustration, all of these mental messy things are not illnesses. And I cannot stress this enough. They are not mental illnesses. They are warning signals that are warning you that something needs to be addressed in your life. So they're emotional warning signals of an underlying cause. The current language and narrative for the past 40 years, which is so unfortunate, which has developed because of our advances, as we've learned more about the brain, people have become more what we call neuroreductionistic. So this current psychiatric and medical model is one of brain. Your brain made you do it. So your life experience is not considered very important. What they're more interested in is your symptoms and symptom control.
Wow.
And so it's
Not
diagnosis and labeling, not the origin. So the focus currently is the treatment of mental ill health is a diagnosis and a label, and generally a drug, and maybe some sort of talk therapy, if you're lucky, but very often it's more conditioning therapy to try and put a Band-Aid on the wound, but you never really address the original cause, and you don't do it over enough time. And it's not in a proper sequence. And if you don't do this in proper time, proper sequence, it's not going to change. You're not going to have that healing manifestation that's needed. So therefore, we've got to move away from that narrative. So we don't have mental ill health on the rise, which we've been told. I don't agree with the stats that 1 in 4 people are depressed and 1 in 5 are anxious, and that it's rising. And I don't agree with that at all. From the research I've done and people in my field, mental health has always been a problem. Since the beginning of time, because humans are in life and life is tough. So 100% of people experience anxiety, depression, and all those things. Obviously, at different extremes. If you live in a war-torn country or you've been abused, it's going to be worse than someone who hasn't.
Sure.
So we all have different levels of trauma, but it is not an illness. I cannot stress that enough. But because that experience, remember what I said in the beginning, the experience is processed through your mind into your brain and body. Your brain and body are affected. So if it's a toxic experience, toxic processing in the mind, toxic network in the brain and the mind and the body, and that then is why the brain and body are affected, why we have all the inflammation and DNA and telomeres and all the things I was saying. But as we get our mind managed, we can change that. So our brain can change to a healthy version. And that's essentially the neurocycle is how we do it. So it doesn't replace therapy, counseling, coaching. It just enhances it. It makes it work. And if you think of it like this, people will go for counseling and therapy once or twice a week. But you've got to live with yourself 24/7. So the neurocycle is how you live with yourself 24/7. What are you doing with your manage your mind in between? So that's it. So then in terms of the timing, you would then sit down and do this for 15 to 45 minutes every day. Within 21 days, you would have deconstructed and reconstructed or embraced, processed and reconceptualized and transformed the toxic tree into a healthy tree. Now, you haven't obliterated your story, but you've changed how it's affecting you. You've changed the control. As you start the process, as you embrace, whether it's that email at night, whether it's the sitting down and doing the big stuff, whether it's that moment that I had with my daughter, the moment you acknowledge and embrace, you shift your body out of danger zone where 1,400 neurophysiological responses are working against you, and you shift it into health. It's crazy. And you shift it into a health zone where 1,400 neurophysiological responses are working for you. So as you begin at day one.
And it's all in your mind.
It's all in your mind. As you begin at day one, it's still going to take you 63 days to solve the problem. But the mere fact that you started, you've shifted yourself out of danger zone. That's really critical. That's what mind management does. So then you go through, you do all 5 steps from day 1 to 21. Then from day 22 to 63, you only do step 5, which is the little action step, which is the accumulated new thoughts, like a summary of the new thought, the new way that you're seeing yourself. So if you've discovered that you're upset over these 21 days because actually that you're upset all the time because you were constantly criticized as a child, so nothing was ever right, so you just never know how to manage it. So every time someone says that anything that's remotely critical, it upsets you. And so you don't know so you almost can't distinguish between healthy, positive criticism. That's not really criticism. It's more just growth and it's feedback. But everything is lumped into one category of they're criticizing, I'm bad. And so you find that over 21 days, so your active reach would be, I'm not bad. It's okay. People are just giving me feedback. I need to, before I get upset, I need to say, is this what or whatever. So that's what the journey would take you through. So you find the underlying cause, which means you've got control. You shifted the power balance. And now for the balance of the 42 days, you're going to practice that new way of thinking. And I mean, this is so clearly, I know you haven't got to the second half of the book, but in the second half of the book, I explain exactly what the neurocycle is. I've got charts. I explain it in depth. I give stories, I give examples.
Goodness. I'm going to be up all night reading.
And then I give hardcore how to manage toxic thoughts, how to manage breaking down toxic, how to manage acute trauma,
you talk about emotional warning signs.
Emotional warning signals, yes.
This is just gold.
Exactly. Thank you. The emotional warning signals would be those things like depression and anxiety. Those emotional. That's first step. Step 1, you're gathering awareness of your emotional warning signals. Yeah. That's where you shift the power balance. But I show you how to do it in the book. Exactly if you've got an acute trauma, like that example I gave, if you've got an established trauma, like the example of why you're upset that I gave, if you've got a established toxic habit, if you've got anything that's established that you want to break over time. But I also show you in the book how to use the 5 steps to build your brain, which is one of the most important mental health tools to build resilience into your brain and your body. And that's where you're learning new information. So
this is the good news. I love you always bring it to just good news.
There's always good news. So you've got all of that in the book as well. You've got the how to build your brain, how to build good habits. Let's say that you want to get into that good exercise routine and so on. You want to build that in. It's going to take 63 days. So you've got it from all angles. So it's pure mind management.
This is so, so good, Dr. Lee. Can I ask you a couple more things before we close?
Sure.
Maybe just do a quick clinical trial on me when it comes to fear. Because you talk a lot about fear versus love.
Yes.
and how fear, what is it you say? We're built for love?
Yeah, we're wired for love. I mentioned
We're
that
wired.
in the beginning. Yeah, I mentioned that's wired for survival, wired for love. So anything that if we're not managing our mind, we go against that natural design. So fear is a big word, but under it would break down. It's an emotion. It's a warning signal. So you'd have to unpack what that fear is specifically. And that's the emotional warning signal concept, which is what you gather when you're in the gathering awareness. You're basically using your wise mind, which is your wired for love survival mind, the pilot and the co-pilot, that example I gave, messy mind, you mind, when I was giving that example earlier on. So you shift into that kind of mode where you stand back and observe your own thinking. So you're stepping into the wired for love mode in order to analyze what's toxic. So fear is a big umbrella word for a whole bunch of other emotions that you would basically, what is the fear? You've got to be much more specific, and you'd use a neurocycle to unpack that.
Dr. Leaf, I can't thank you enough. I am so excited. I honor you for your work, and I'm sure it hasn't been easy. I know you've made sacrifices along the way. It's changing lives. It's changed mine. I can't wait to start 63 days of cleaning up my mental mess. Thank you for always being full of good news for all of us, and love to you, your family, and keep doing the good work. We're listening, and it's working for us. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. And just to let people know where thank you so much for that. They can get the book anywhere where books are sold. And
Wonderful.
they can, my Instagram handle is Dr. Caroline Leaf, and my webpage is drleaf.com. And I've got a podcast called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, so they can go and learn lots there too. But the book's available right now anywhere where books are sold.
Thank you. From Allen to Dallas.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.